Fade in. Water. Flowing. A dark green shade. A footsteps into frame. It's a man in a dark suit, stealthily walking in the knee-high water of the sewer pipeline. Finally got to the sewer sidewalk, carrying on and stopping at the corner. Stopping to spy on what was happening on the other side. The four figures were conversing. He recognized three of them as the crime kingpins of the criminal underground of the city of Arkany, exchanging with them a briefcase with some dangerous technology being transported. The masked man, whose name was John's mission was to watch and report, but seeing as the kingpins didn't have their gangs here, he saw this as an opportunity to bring them all in. Jumped out of the shadows with his blaster in one hand and a badge in the other. "Special Regulations Division," he said. "You're all under arrest. Slide the briefcase over." Of the three figures, a man in a large hat standing at the center of them. "Oh, you've got to play the game a lot longer than that if you want to get the slip on us." He smirked as a canister fell out of his trench coat. It was a smoke bomb, which detonated instant. John tried bolting through the smoke to catch them before they could get away, but it seemed they had vanished. With a relief, John saw the briefcase on the floor. He grabbed it. Opening it, he noticed the technology wasn't in there anymore. The only thing in there was a pulse bomb detonating in 3 seconds. The briefcase, flung it forward and sprinted the opposite direction. It detonated, blasting an electrical wave of energy, raging against the water, smashing the concrete, slamming on the floor. Coughing, he pulled his mask off to get some fresh air, but there was nothing but more concrete dust in the air. He leaned on the wall, thinking about how the criminals just got away, and how his boss was gonna murder him for it. Hello viewers, this is your Comet-Man here, and I'll be drawing and narrating comic book pages of my original story and characters, the Maestroes, who I made when I was like 10, I think. This wacky trio of characters who fight a bunch of bad guys. Guess I'm writing and drawing their story today, and without further delay, let's jump right in. At a secret Special Regulations Division base, SRD. "You can't just break protocol and do whatever you feel like, John," yelled the director of the SRD, Layla Taylor. "Your mission was to just watch and report," she said. John sat there taking it all in. "Now, three of the city's kingpins have gotten away, you jeopardized the mission, and now they know we're onto us. You almost got yourself killed. Is there anything you have to say for yourself?" Yeah, just one," John replied. "Who are those guys?" Pointing at two men who are standing in the corner of the room. Layla sighed. "Look, John, I have a certain mission for you. Rain is back." John's expression changed to a sudden serious and stern face. "I know this one's personal," Layla added. And it was. Rain was a ruthless clan of warriors and assassins dedicated to gaining power over and controlling the criminal underground of the city of Arkany, striking fear with the mere mention of their name. The SRD's been hunting them for years. Many have been lost, including John's mother, Lara Yoshida, who was one of the agents who died battling Rain. She died in a final battle, preventing them from acquiring a powerful item. "The case is yours if you want it," Layla said. "Thank you," John replied. About to grab the file, she held it down with her hand. "On one condition." "This is a really important case," she said. "You're gonna need help. And those two over there will be your partners." "I don't need partners. I'm better off doing this one solo," John replied. "I beg to differ, Mr. John," Layla said. "Seeing as how you botched your last mission, this is now mandatory. You have Alan Frazier over there. He'll be your marksman. Tom Cortez, scientific mind, real brilliant. Use them how you will. They need field experience, and you need to learn to take responsibility on missions. Oh, and one more thing. Any leads you find, you report back to me. We've been hunting Rain for years. This is an important mission, and if you botch it, your fate will be out of my hands." John sighed. "I won't let you down." Tom, John, and Alan's mission file said Rain had been staking out and watching Maestro Labs ever since it received a power core known as the Exodus Jewel, a powerful source of ununderstood mystic energy. Being studied at the lab, the fair assumption would be that they want to steal it for unknown reasons. The three would also stake out Maestro Labs in hopes of running into some Rain warriors. For the next day or two, the stakeout would be very boring. Tom would go on and on about division rules and protocols, revising them, repeating them to the two of them over and over, compensating for the fact that he was scared about being this close to the action. John would be annoyed by this and mostly shun them the whole time, while Alan would crack bad jokes the entire time, as Alan saw this as a chance to forge new best friends. He had never had those. But things wouldn't be quiet for long. One night, they spotted Rain warriors staking out and watching Maestro Labs. John jumped at the fact that he finally was getting a chance at Rain. The Rain warriors were two stealth troopers and a woman in a long purple jacket. This was Rain's master Colgrim's right-hand woman, Sylvia. John would say that he was going to go bring them in, but then Tom brought up how Miss Taylor said they should stick together. John would sigh and finally agree and tell them to stay behind him. They would sneak up on the Rain warriors. John would jump in with two Karma blades. Tom freaking out because they didn't have a plan. Alan confident that they would be fine so long as they have each other. I think. Having jumped in head first, the team would be totally uncoordinated in the fight, ended up getting overpowered by Sylvia and the Rain warriors. The three would end up walking away with nothing but punches, bruises, and cuts, barely managing to escape. Rain, now seeing they were on the SRD's radar, would quickly steal the Exodus Jewel. John, now seeing that Rain would be expecting SRD agents to be coming after them, and with all the restrictions and protocols, it would be trickier to capture Rain. John then decided that there would have to be something else. They couldn't carry on as agents. That would be too obvious for Rain to see coming. They would take off their hoodies that had the SRD badge on them and just keep the tactical gear and wear colored hoodie masks. John would wear a green mask, Tom a red, and Alan a blue mask. Tom was very unwilling about this. He was stepping out of his comfort zone, breaking protocol and rules, while Alan was excited at a chance to be superheroes, as he called them. John remembered that in his battle with Sylvia, she had said the city would have no new hope. He immediately remembered this was the title of the new tower that was getting built, the tower that was meant to be a symbol of development and advancement for the city of Arkany, a city that had been struck with fear and corruption and crime. Over the next few days, the three would bond over investigating Rain and come to become friends. For the first time in a long time, John wasn't feeling alone. Meanwhile, Rain's leader Axel Krogrim had planned to use the Exodus Jewel inside an energy bazooka, which he would use to destroy the tower before its unveiling. Rain's leaders who came before Axel had managed to take entire cities, but when Axel lost to Lara Yoshida 20 years ago, he was in shame. He was a failed leader. But now, this is his chance to regain his honor. This is his chance to prove himself. With Sylvia, his daughter, by his side. Sylvia didn't much care for the quest, but she cared about impressing her father. Then maybe he would notice her. Axel would appear the day before the tower's unveiling, pointing his beam energy blaster at the building, locked and loaded, ready to blast. Right before he aimed, they were interrupted. Tom, John, and Alan appeared in their hooded masks and would engage them in confrontational battle. Tom and Alan would go after Sylvia and the Rain Warriors, while John battled it with Axel, if it could be called that. Axel immediately brutalized John. Him being the more powerful warrior, John was barely managing to keep up or catch a breath. Alan would manage to out-clever Sylvia, finally shooting an arrow without missing, while Tom used his own mix of smoke bombs to immobilize the Rain Warriors without a head-on attack. Axel would smack John onto the ground, but John would smirk, and Axel would notice that the bazooka was gone. Alan had run off with it, passing it to Tom, who would then go on to deactivate it beyond repair. Axel would yell in anger, and John, though bleeding, would smirk and tell him it was over. Axel attempted to jump at John, but Alan went on to shoot him with a taser arrow. With him down, John was ready and finally glad that he could take Axel in. But then Sylvia jumped in front of Axel to protect him while unconscious. An explosion set off behind them from a grenade Sylvia had left. The ground beneath them began to crumble, and as Sylvia carried Axel away, Tom and Alan were now hanging off a falling piece of rock. John had now had to decide whether to go after Axel or help Tom and Alan. Just as Tom and Alan were about to slip into the caving-in rock, John grabbed them both by the arm, using all his might to pull them up, and the three of them would sprint away from the rock crumbling beneath them. But the building they were standing on began to cave in right beneath their feet. But just then, an SRD jet appeared, hovering above them, and letting down a rope which they held onto tight and flew them away from the falling landmass. Elsewhere, Axel would wake up, and immediately, not even giving it a thought, would shrug off the fact that Sylvia saved him. This would enrage her and sadden her, while the three of them, especially John, upset that Axel managed to escape. They were glad that they all survived, though that little joy would be short-lived for the news that waited for them back at the division. The three of them were fired. All three, shocked at this news, tried to beg and plead with Layla not to do this, although she specified to them that this was not her choice, that this was from the higher-ups. They botched a mission with Rain, which has been being hunted by the SRD for many years now. Layla's voice explaining this, Tom and Alan's voices pleading for her to do something. These had all just become ringing noise to John. He had been stuck, frozen, right after he heard that he was fired, that he had lost the job, that he had gotten to be a hero like his mother. He had failed at the destiny he had set out for ever since he was a child. Without saying a word, he walked out of the room. A day would pass, until right before sunset of the day of the tower's unveiling. It was being unveiled by the Samir family from Sansha, who were funding the tower's creation in Arkany. With the only bazooka capable of processing and harnessing the power of the Exodus Jewel now destroyed, Axel needed another plan, which would be he would break into the tower right at its unveiling and destroy it in front of all. He would hack into the tower's arc reactor and input the Exodus Jewel and decimate the whole tower in an explosion. Meanwhile, elsewhere, John was sitting in his apartment, depressed and loathing, contemplating everything he had lost. And just then, Layla would appear and ask John if his mission was over. John would look away, ignoring her. She asked John if this is what his mother would have wanted, for him to give up after a few hits. She would tell John that he can't give up now, that some badge isn't what makes a hero. And she brought to light that the three of them had gotten closer to stopping Rain. In just a few days, they were operating outside the rules than Rain had in years. She told John that he had to see this thing through, that she couldn't stop Rain with SRD protocols, but they could as something else. John began to come around, and Layla said if he was going to become a hero, he would need the weapon of a hero. She pulled out a sword from the corner. It was the sword of Lara Yoshida, John's mother, and would give it to him as a symbol. John shed a tear and thanked her, but he said if he was going to stop Axel, he still couldn't do it alone. And Layla brought up that she already collected help. Tom and Alan came in behind Layla and said they were all ready to fight for something bigger than themselves. Although now no longer SRD agents, they needed equipment and gear. Layla agreed to give them unrecorded, unused model versions of the SRD armors. They would all look for and find armor in their sizes. Alan picking up a bow and a quiver of arrows, and Tom using a short staff, of which on the way he would modify to have pulse tasers at the end of. Layla would wish them luck and tell them to signal her to come in with SRD troops to arrest Axel, as she couldn't take them in now because that would scare him off. She needed the three of them to go in and stop him. Three would drive off in a prototype unrecorded SRD tactical van. Meanwhile, at the tower, all the security guards were taken out, things in wrecks. Hostages and citizens all there were tied up, including the Samir family. The city enforcers couldn't enter on the count of all the hostages. Axel and his troopers were there, calibrating the arc reactor to the Exodus jewel, readying it to decimate, and they were leaving in just a minute. Axel would be happy he was about to complete his mission, that once the city knew, they would fear Rain once more. They were shocked as an arrow fired right into the keyboard they were working on. Axel ragefully turned around and saw John in a bright green suit holding a sword, and Tom in red and black holding his staff, and Alan in blue with his bow and arrow. Axel was furious. He immediately recognized these were the same three warriors who have been thwarting him the past few days by the colors they wore. In a rage, Axel would have his warriors on guard, ready for battle. Sylvia too, who was a bit less motivated now. They would all be facing up against each other, ready to finish the three, right here, right now. John ready with his sword, the Ultra Blade. Rain now all running at the three of them. Tom threw forward two little canisters that detonated, expelling smoke everywhere, making it impossible to see. Alan put on heat signature goggles and began to shoot arrows, knocking out the Rain troopers. Axel threw down a canister of his own, which vacuumed and sucked in all the smoke, having learned from last time. Only two troopers remained, as well as Sylvia and Axel. John and Alan would have to battle Sylvia and Axel, while Tom attempted to get to the keyboard and deactivate the arc reactor. John and Axel would battle again, sword and scythe clashing, while Alan battled with Sylvia. Tom kept trying to deactivate the arc reactor, while at the same time trying to knock out the Rain warriors with his taser staff. They seemed to just keep getting back up, and the arc reactor kept getting more and more unstable, shooting out waves of energy that were just barely missing them. Sylvia fought angrily at the fact that Alan kept cracking jokes and trying to make conversation during their battle, until he said something. He asked her why she was working for a square like Axel. To Alan this was just a joke, but to her this question cut deep. She stopped fighting. Axel had John down yet again, ready to throw the final blow at him, when suddenly the energy from the arc reactor blasted out a bolt of energy that shot right into John's sword. The Ultra Blade absorbed the energy, and when he blocked Axel's scythe with it, the energy recoiled, throwing Axel, slamming him into the wall. He put out his hand for his daughter to help him, but she would turn her back on him, smashing through the window and jumping out. Her jacket turning into a glider, she escaped. John would set off the beacon, alerting the SRD agents to come, and then in a last-ditch effort, the three of them together pulled the lever to turn off the arc reactor, waves of energy crashing around, but then they managed to push it through. The arc reactor powered down, the hostages were relieved. SRD troops were inbound, not wanting to be seen. The three would quickly leave the building and watch the SRD agents storm it. 1 month later, Axel would go on to be sent to a secure prison in another city. Sylvia was never found. The Rain troopers left were arrested, although Rain was far from the only problems in the city of Arkany. The three would go on to continue fighting any threats that may rise in their city, and Layla was ready to secretly offer help any time. And as to the hostages they saved, they would go on to spread their word as the Maestroes who saved the hope and justice of Arkany. And that would be it for my original story and characters, the Maestroes. Man, I won't lie, I really like doing this. I didn't think I'd pull off the story, but I think I did okay. What do you think? Leave a comment down below and tell me. And with that, this is your Comet here, signing out. Bye bye.